The country is following a mounting clash between the Trump administration's effort to declare wartime powers to deport when there is no war. Now, that was ruled unlawful by a federal judge. Then there were reports that Trump officials deliberately defied that judge's order. President Trump then unloading on that same judge, demanding his ousting through impeachment. All of this coming through in the past 24 hours on this story that we've been bringing you. Now, the court process part will take time. But as this clash escalated, legal experts wondered if and how the Supreme Court would view these blatant efforts to test or defy court orders, and would they weigh in some manner or more quickly? Because Trump is accused here of not only obviously violating the law full stop, saying I have wartime powers when there's no war, but then furthermore, allegations and evidence that he would abuse power and try to intimidate that judge, pushing for the impeachment, which is usually reserved, of course, for bribery or misconduct, nothing like this. But that might be a ploy to put pressure on judges or to oust them. Trump's DOJ also taking related measures, asking that this judge be removed from the case, while legal experts see no grounds for that. So tonight, as we return to this ongoing story, that was one of the big questions. How would the Supreme Court or Chief Justice Roberts respond? And the news is an extraordinary public rebuke of President Trump from the Supreme Court Chief Justice himself, from the famous leader of this court, a Republican appointee, by the way. This is, and I'm about to read it to you, it's brief and clear, a striking and rare development. Justices rarely comment on pending government disputes outside of the court rulings they issue when it's time for them to rule. And the Supreme Court is nowhere near ruling on this case. It's at the district level in a very early posture if you want to get into it. Indeed, most justices go many years without saying anything out of court that could be seen as criticizing or disagreeing with a sitting president. All of that is the context for this. This is the first time Chief Justice Roberts has spoken this way in President Trump's second term with all of these legal issues. The statement reads, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. And he refers to the normal review process that exists for that purpose. This is new. It's a big deal. It is a direct rebuttal, a legal fact check, and a line in the sand right now while it matters. Chief Justice Roberts knows how even lawless and precedent-busting requests by Donald Trump can quickly be embraced by parts of the Republican Party, or all of it, can pick up steam in a MAGA Congress. And so he's using his power right now to hold the line against a president who would abuse the process to intimidate judges, to try to get them removed, to try to end the very real checks and balances we have in our system. This is one of those stories where a day ago or a week ago, people were saying, when are we going to hear from the Supreme Court in a more direct way if these things are as bad as we are hearing they are? And tonight, the news is we have now heard from the Chief Justice. Now, some context. If you could remove judges when you disagreed with them, then we wouldn't have checks and balances. I mean, the president's really usually the most powerful politician in the country and usually the world. If he could just oust the judges that disagree with his power, then the judiciary wouldn't mean anything. And Chief Justice Roberts, I want to be clear, is not concerned that this really extreme radical impeachment idea would work. He's not concerned that Donald Trump could actually get this or any other federal judge removed because they disagree on a ruling. I'll remind you why. The House can start an impeachment process. So you could get it going and you could try to intimidate and harass judges this way. But it would still take 67 votes in the United States Senate to ever remove any judge through impeachment. And even a united Republican Party doesn't have those votes right now. They're far shy of 60-some votes. Many Republican senators have also said they oppose these tactics. So, real talk. It is not like Roberts had to act to keep these judges in office. He could have let this all play out, but he acted today on apparent principle, summoning his authority, pushing back on this attempted creeping normalization of the tactics we've been reporting on that are clearly against the rule of law, and some are even authoritarian. That's the constitutional part. Then there's the deportation, these issues, the clash over this weekend's ruling which held that any Trump administration plane holding these detainees needed to be returned to the U.S. Two Trump officials telling Axios they defied that order directly out of the White House, coordinated with DHS and Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff, landing the planes in El Salvador, while Trump's DOJ lawyers looked quite suspicious in a new hearing, because when they were pressed on this, they told this same judge that Trump is attacking that they wouldn't provide any more information. Pretty defiant. Hiding the available information from a judge also could be a rookie move if the information's already out there. This is the map of the flights that suggests the judicial order was violated. You don't have to absorb this all. We're putting it on the screen for you to understand that they could have shared some of these facts with the judge and they're hiding it. But the New York Times put this breakdown together with two planes in the air when the ruling came. The third hadn't even left yet. So to review tonight, the judge ordered those deportations stopped because the president claimed war powers in peacetime. Very simple. I only get to do this because we're at war, but we're not at war, the judge says. You don't get to do it. Trump officials then went forward with these deportations anyway across those 3 plane trips. Some officials even openly mocking the idea that they would have to follow a court ruling. And then Trump doubled down, attacking this judge and floating what would be a futile bid to impeach him. There's no evidence that you would get a bunch of Democratic senators to join in that effort, DOA. And then the highest court in the land's Chief Justice made this rare move to enter this very live conflict to rebut and fact-check the sitting president. So it's not going well for the Trump administration on this issue, even if they seem to welcome some of these clashes, as we've reported, that they sometimes want to lose, test the courts, or get it up to the Supreme Court. They seem to think they will expand their powers in the Supreme Court. And while, let's be clear, Chief Justice Roberts did not and is not supposed to say how he might rule on such a case as this one, he's clearly pushing back against this overall move, the overall energy coming out of a sometimes lawless White House. And now we're seeing wider concerns about what Trump is doing. MAGA allies like the Rupert Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal saying it is clearly troubling to see Trump officials appear to disdain the law while they claim to uphold it. Here's how some of those Trump officials respond.
This one federal judge, again, thinks he can control foreign policy for the entire country, and he cannot.
He didn't care about the lives of those officers. He didn't care about the national security of this country.
The administration may continue doing these flights?
Absolutely.
I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
He doesn't care. And they'll keep doing the flights. And they are projecting very clearly they want to defy court orders. Those people you saw there are not just random political figures. We've told you before, there is a lot of room for political rhetoric. Sometimes judges will even give you leeway and say that was false or you lied, but it was out of court. We just showed you a border official and the current Attorney General of the United States, and this strategy and this lawlessness has now brought a rebuke from the highest court in the land. We are not yet at a constitutional crisis, but the Supreme Court is listening, and the president, at a minimum, is getting fact-checked.
I think it's reflecting what unprecedented times that we are in. If President Trump's administration ignores a judicial order, what he's saying is he is above the law. So this is not about whether one judge can tell the president or the administration what to do. It is about whether one branch, the judicial branch, can weigh in on what is legal, or whether the president gets to decide what's legal without any recourse. But I think what's important here is to put the Supreme Court, or specifically Justice Roberts' statement, in context. This same Supreme Court found that President Trump has immunity. So I think when you talk about the rule of law, we have to put in context that we have the President Trump who's been told he is above the law effectively by the Supreme Court, and now he's acting in accordance with that very decree. So I think in some ways we have to...
I would quibble with the leap there. The criminal immunity issue, however controversial, is about whether he can be prosecuted and sent to prison, which gets you up to the Nixonian level, or a rarity in our history. Whereas here we're talking about carrying out his duties, not whether there is a new crime committed per se, but rather whether all federal officials acting under the color of law have to abide by court rulings. And so what the Roberts statement today says is you're not going to oust these judges and overturn that. It would seem to be helpful, whatever one thinks of their past immunity ruling.
Well, here's what I would say, though, Ari, is that you have to have some kind of recourse. So let's say we have to play this out. If you have federal officials who are obeying a direct order from the president or disobeying court orders, right? That's constitutional crisis. And the next step, Ari, there is if you have the president who decides it doesn't matter what courts say the rule of law is, I am the rule of law. I get to act in contravention to what you say the law is. I get to do what I think is illegal. I think under the Supreme Court's ruling, I don't know that we have a basis for a court to then interfere and say, in judging his official actions, whether or not anyone else can weigh in. And yes, I understand that there's a criminal distinction here, but I think more broadly, it undermines the rule of law as a principle in our society.
Do you think it's good that the Chief Justice spoke out?
I think in the efforts that anyone speaking out, I think it is welcome. I think anyone who's standing on the side of the rule of law should do so. And that goes across all of civil society. I think it's always welcome. I think what we want, though, is that as we speak out, as we act, all of our actions are consistent with that protection and defense of the rule of law, not just statements, but actions and use of our official power or as citizens across the spectrum.